Okay, let's move on to actually how I recommend. This is my method for growing different things, and some people here who grow very good plants will tell you that it works. And it's just, you know, it's something to do if you plan ahead a little bit and if you have time. If you went into my garden right now, you would see, in fact, you would see a lot of this, but I try to go in ahead of the time that I'm going to plant and let the soil start getting ready. Like I said, you know, the fertilizer is not immediately available. Any fertilizer, it's going to be acted upon by soil microbes and things like that. And so wherever I'm going to plant an individual plant, be it a pepper plant, a tomato plant, or an eggplant, my way of planting it, I will go in and put 1 to 2 cups of the Medina fertilizer or whatever good fertilizer you have on the ground. And then I put the equivalent of 1/4 of a bag of that ladybug compost, which is like a little less than a 5-gallon bucket through. I'll dump that over the fertilizer, make a little depression in there, and for however long it is from then until the time that I'm ready to plant, every time I walk by I'll take the hose and I'll fill up that little cone with water. It soaks down through there. It's carrying all of this good organic material, the leachate, the humates, the different bacteria and things are going down into the soil. And then when I'm ready to plant, I simply go back and plant a plant right down through the middle of that, or 2 plants as I usually do my tomatoes. We'll talk about tomatoes in a minute. And I mean, literally, you want to back away so they don't hit you in the face as they, you know, come out of the ground. It almost seems like they grow that quickly. When I'm planting squash, I plant my squash in, you know, a pretty good sized hill. I'll put maybe 3 or 4 cups of fertilizer and the equivalent of a full bag of compost on it. Where I'm going to be planting things in rows, I'll put my row of fertilizer down, and then I'll go down along the top of it with some of that compost and put it on top. It's just amazing what this does to get the soil ready for planting. Probably the thing that convinced me of what a good idea this was is that several years ago I was going to plant a bunch of fruit trees, and I mean, this was September. That ground was so hard you couldn't break it with a pickaxe or a digging bar. You know how hard soil gets here in late summer and fall. I knew I wasn't going to get my fruit trees till January, so I went out, and everywhere I was planning to put a fruit tree, I put a wheelbarrow full of compost down there. Just mounded it up there, and then I didn't touch it. I didn't water it, didn't do anything. It was still a fairly dry fall. When I went back in January to plant my fruit trees, you could have dug that soil with a spoon. That's the result of all of that microbial activity getting in there and softening the soil. That's why if you've got really hard-packed soil, spraying with something like Medina Plus, which stimulates microbes, will soften it, help it absorb water. That's why spraying a little molasses works so well, while spraying some compost tea works so well. But, you know, if you do this a little ahead of the time that you plant, your plants will just take off that much faster in the spring or in the fall or whenever you're planting. Is my entire garden that way? No. Part of my garden is still totally overgrown with weeds from last year when we had to quit gardening for lack of water and all. But there are plenty of spots where my first 20 or so tomato plants will go in. I mean, the cages are already in place. Everything's ready to go there. So today, you really want to plant tomato plants, but you know it's going to freeze again. Go ahead and get your soil ready. I mean, getting a little bit of a head start on it, you'll be amazed at how much better things will grow when you put them in the ground. I don't believe in treating prophylactically for most insect problems, but if you're digging around and you find a bunch of grubs, go ahead and put some beneficial nematodes down. Beneficial nematodes are very, very effective at eliminating grubs. You know, they come on a little blue sponge like that. There are 1 million nematodes on that sponge minimum. We count them all when they come in to be sure they're there. But, you know, put that down. That will control fire ants, that will control grub worms, that will control wireworms. Wireworms, these things, again, they're not worms. They're actually a little segmented. They're the larval state of a click beetle. But they look like a little golden segmented worm. You think, oh, no problem with those. Well, when you grow potatoes or carrots or things like that, they love to chew holes in things below the ground. But nematodes will control wireworms just like they will the grubs and most other problems that are in the soil. Yes? They do a very good job on fleas. I grew up, again, with my grandfather spraying malathion when we had a flea outbreak. If we got 90% of the fleas, we thought we were doing good. Several years ago, I had a horrible flea outbreak at my ranch. And I sprayed the beneficial nematodes. I could not find a flea a week later. Not one flea, and it was 3.5 years before I had to treat again. They really do work against fleas. Yes?
What about the little black ants on okra?
Those are usually fire ants. And, oh, I know, but let them get on. You'll know what they are. Fire ant seed eggplant, fire ant seed okra. There is a non-toxic material. Do we have any of it out here? Yeah. This stuff, harmless to people and pets, but good fire ant killer. And the garden is one place that I recommend killing most all of your fire ants. I do not recommend, especially if you have pets, don't kill all of the fire ants in your yard or on your property. Fire ants do a couple of good things, believe it or not. They kill termites, they kill ticks. And since we have such an infestation of fire ants, we don't have a fraction of the ticks that we once did. And ticks, I mean, the percentage of ticks these days carrying Lyme disease and other things is really high. And it's not just out in the country. A friend of ours lives about 6 blocks from here, got Lyme from a tick bite in her yard right here just off Jones Fallsburger. So I don't like ticks. And that's one good thing. That I don't like fire ants either. But I always leave a few fire ant mounds around because they really, really have reduced their tick populations.
Okay, so you do the essentials, then you do the compost, and then?
We're going to come to that next. Yes, ma'am.
About 30% rows collard greens, and about a fourth of those plants were just totally covered in red and little aphids, like looks rusty. So what would you do when they're that full?
Aphids are, they can be a problem. Generally speaking, they don't show up until the end of the growing season. Lots of times if you get aphids, it's time to pull the plants up and plant something else. Collards, you should still have plenty of time. I would work at killing the aphids, different things you can use. One thing is just a blast of water. The aphids are sitting there and they've got their jaws in the plant, sucking the juice out of the plant. Hit them with a blast of water, the aphid body goes this way, the jaws stay in the plant. So you can eliminate them. If you wash them off the plants, chances are you've killed them in the process.
Plants are so big,
Yeah.
I can't get their release.
Something like insecticidal soap is one of the safest things to use. Won't bother you at all, but it does a fair job at killing aphids. You can release ladybugs. Ladybugs do a wonderful job of controlling the majority of the aphids. And next time you plant, take a little fireplace ash and work it into the soil where you're planting. I have no idea why, but Malcolm did a bunch of experiments, and everywhere that he puts a little bit of ash in, he had virtually no aphids. Don't ask me why, but I've seen the pictures, and it does seem to work.
I have a question then. Last year I had zinnias, a 30-foot row of zinnias, which bloomed from May through November. And gobs of butterflies that came. Would that promote the worms in the rest of the vegetables? I mean, this is part of a vegetable garden. Is that
That's a good question. All butterflies and moths have a caterpillar as a part of their life cycle. The caterpillars that make the butterflies, for the most part, don't eat stuff in the vegetable garden. The caterpillars that make moths, yeah, most of the caterpillars that you see chewing on things in the vegetable garden make a moth rather than a butterfly. Now there are plenty of things that will eat in your landscape. The little pretty orange butterflies called Gulf fritillary, their larvae are going to be on your passion vines. The things that you see on your parsley and your rue, they make the black swallowtails. But in the vegetable garden, no. And the control for caterpillars, the BT is probably the best thing out there. Plus, of course, don't knock down your wasp nest. I realize we don't have any paper wasp nests, but those are the natural enemies of caterpillars. And people that have caterpillars probably knock down all their wasp nests. I mean, I have pecan trees this big around, probably 30 of them in one field, not all that big. But I never see a webworm. People in town, if you got a pecan tree, you got webworms everywhere. But I've got world-class wasp nests. Malcolm Beck was up at my place one time, and he walked around, and between my balcony upstairs and my porch downstairs, he counted 130 wasp nests. And I don't have any caterpillars. He loves the wasps. He said that first time, and if you want to see this, you take a stick, go break open a web where you have the webworms, and watch for a few minutes. You'll see the wasps coming in and hauling off the caterpillars. He said the first time he broke a web open, it took the wasp 10 minutes to find it. Said the second time he broke a web open, it took him 5 minutes to find it. Said the third time he picked up the stick and the wasp started following him. I don't think I'll go quite that far. But if you leave your wasp nest alone, you're not going to have nearly as many problems with caterpillars. Okay, yes, sir.
Webster's and Yellow Jack is the same thing, or they different?
The ones that make the paper things up under the eaves, yes, those are what we call yellow jackets.
Like
You
that
go-
one right there?
Yeah, like that one right up there. Don't jump, there's no wasp on it now.
Those are what?
Yeah, those, you go to northern part of the country, they've got a nasty little hornet that lives in the ground, they call it a yellow jacket. But those guys are actually very good. But, you know, we won't go into all of that. I want to move on just a second to crops. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, just going back to the soil preparation.
Uh-huh.